Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Grid on the Record. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with John Carpenter, president of Clearstream Architectural, a company pushing the boundaries of what's possible with architectural glass. Whether it's privacy glass, oversized structural glazing, or ultra custom coatings, Clearstream is working directly with designers, builders, and architects to deliver sustainable, high-performance glass that does more than just look good. In this episode, we dig into where architectural innovation is headed, how material science is shaping the future of construction, and what it really takes to bring bold ideas to life. So, hey, John, thanks so much for jumping on the show. Really glad to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much. Your expertise is going to be very helpful. And I say that I was going through your website and I was blown away by the range of the offerings, structural glass, privacy, solar heat gain control, even the customizable U values and colored low E coatings. Like that's next level flexibility for architects and, engineers. And we were kind of talking about that just before, but just for the audience here to kick things off, can you share a bit about your role and how it fits into the bigger picture at Clearstream?
Sure. So we started about 20 years ago, and my goal was to develop a company and product lines. Actually, it started through another company who approached me, and I saw an opportunity there, which is to rather than simply going and trying to sell something to someone, to take the position of what is it you're trying to do? What type of building is it? What's important to you? What's important to the architects? And where's the building located? What are the other governing factors? And then what are the concerns that you have as a designer, as an architect, as an owner, as an operator? And what then can we capitalize on to make it more efficient and better for the people inside the building?
That's amazing. And then I guess your role is very hands-on, especially, when it comes to like bringing new product capabilities into the market. So, with that in mind, what does a typical day like look like for you, or more actually, what should it look like when everything is running smoothly?
And so I do continually reach out campaigns, as an example, through emails, through LinkedIn. I have almost now like 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. All are
Mm,
specifically architects, designers, engineers, and building owners. If someone, and I often, people will reach out and say, hey, can we join on LinkedIn? But it's not somebody who sits on the opposite side of the desk. I won't do it. It has to be someone who is an influencer or a decision maker within the industry because
mhm.
I don't want to
Saturate.
saturate what I'm trying to do.
Fair enough. That's a great perspective because now you're looking around and there's a lot of this fake content and it's just a lot of, I think the term is filler content where it
Yes.
doesn't actually apply to anything and it's just, kind of pumped out in bulk in order to get views, get attention, but it's not actually solving a problem. So it's a very, very commendable way to approach it. And I guess with like the major shifts that we're seeing, that being one of them, especially in content, but maybe specifically more in your field in the architectural space, when it comes to materials like glass, especially, and with the topic of sustainability, energy performance, or aesthetics, what's that broader landscape like with your LinkedIn community? Are those some of the topics that you're touching on, or is there some other content that precedes it?
I would say I do, and I do it more at a higher level. I realize that the engineers want to talk to engineers, and I'm not an engineer, but I have a fair
Mhm.
bit of knowledge of some of the determining factors in decision making, what they could be, and also a considerable repertoire of solutions for those. So my goal is to commence discussions, find solutions, and then when it gets down to becoming highly technical, to say, okay, look, whomever is are your engineering team, why don't we get them together with this factory engineering team, and we'll sort things out and get to exactly what you need for that building.
So is it based more on connections, or is that just an aspect of it?
So I'd say connections are really important. Um, it's important to be constantly out there. I mean, I've always considered sales and marketing and something where as though you're walking down a path through a forest and you're throwing seeds out in front of you. You're always seeding, and by the time you get there, something might be coming up, and it's you have to do it all the time because
Of course.
interestingly, I can tell you that I used to do luncheon. Well, I still do them, but not nearly the number. I used to do up to 150 luncheon runs a year with architects. And many I'd leave and I'd say, oh, well, I don't think we're necessarily a good fit for that firm. Or they said, hey, we don't have anything right now. But a year, 2 years later, sometimes 3 years later, I'd get an email from them saying, hey, we're doing a project and we remember you. And I think you have a solution for us. Can we get together? And that,
Mhm.
yeah, that's happens a fair bit. I mean,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
but I'm saying it relative to the number of connections you have with people in this industry, or I do. Yeah.
Course. No, I think like what we always say is, connections are like the fruit of business. Like everything evolves through connections. People are sold on the experience, not necessarily, or an emotion, sorry,
Yeah,
rather than exactly, what your product is, whatever that might be.
exactly. If you're going to you need a car and you go to a car dealership, what you want to know is, hey, this is, there's, as an example, in my case, it's just me and my wife. Our children are all grown up, and we like to go up north, and so and this sort of thing, and what would work for us. And please come with a solution.
Exactly.
And I don't want someone to, in my personal life, I don't want someone to try to take me off on all these other tangents. I really want you to answer what my concerns are. And I think I conduct myself in the glass business in that same way. Or at
Mhm.
least I try to.
Well, like exactly. That's all we can really do is try. But no, kind of streamlining it back to what you're saying is you want a direct answer to whatever it is that you're looking for. So I want to tie it slightly back to, your LinkedIn presence and, what you're doing in the community. What are some of the conversations that you notice are getting the most traction or the ones that are, that you believe are solving the most problems for people?
People or for, are you talking still, we're talking about glass, right? Still?
Or even just in the architectural space alone,
Sure.
if there's like conversations going on, yes, of course.
Sure. So my perspective again is glass. So that's where I'm focused. And I'm not going to try to interject my opinion in some other area that I don't know anything about. So in terms of glass, I would say U values, which means thermal efficiency of the building, of the glass itself. And there are ways to do that. Historical ways have evolved to do that, but I don't want to say anything bad about something, but can come with challenges. So some people might say, oh, if you want a better U value, just do a triple glazed insulated glazing unit. But that triple glazed insulated glazing unit may be great on the west northeast side of the building, but on the south it's not so good, and maybe not even on the west. You can have challenges with that, with the heat inside it and the billowing and this sort of thing. So it's just not such an easy solution as to, okay, here's something that's going to work. And I would say earlier on, in as we became more and more aware of energy requirements for buildings and the lives of the people inside the building, the solutions tended, in my estimation, to be fairly simplified maybe, and required a lot more development, and that has certainly occurred.
That's amazing. That's a great way to look at it. And I think there's a lot more to unpack there, but for now, I think all I'm kind of thinking about is, how do these technical innovations like smart coatings, oversized panels, the color matched glass, kind of shape your research and development, I guess, area, like the research and
Project,
development
project.
process, or even, client conversations with, some clients that might not necessarily know or need to be educated about what
Sure.
it is that you're doing.
I mean, all clients, they all know essentially as much as I do in a way. I mean, obviously architects are very smart people. They know quite a bit about it, thousands of topics. So it's difficult to become an expert in every one. And so from my perspective, I look at it, who am I speaking to as an example now? Who is the architect? Which firm is it? And what is the project? And if I can give you a great example. So a couple of years ago, I was working with an architect and a company owner who wanted to build a new headquarters building. And so one of the challenges that they had with their existing building was absenteeism. And we found out that the absenteeism was due to the fact that the views to the exterior from inside the building were horrible. Many people didn't have them. They had blinds down. Blinds get pulled down in the morning and they don't get opened again. People forget to open them. So you have this very dull office space. And people were becoming physically and mentally somewhat unhealthy, or let's say unsatisfied. So we made the decision to try a technology that I had. And I said, look, there are lots of studies. I pointed them towards studies which showed that if you can have an excellent environment where people are pleased to be at work, their productivity will markedly improve. And productivity in this instance meant reduced absenteeism. So
Mhm.
we ran those numbers. We did a lot of detail. The company owner said, "Yeah, I'm definitely going to do this. If you can increase my productivity by, I think it was 1% or 2%, that will pay for this glass for the entire building done, within a year."
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, we absolutely achieved that. It's actually something that they measured. They actually knew that their absenteeism rates had increased. And I had another project. We did a train repair depot for a huge, huge building. The problem with the old one is that trains come in and workers who are repairing them, they're down in these almost like a pit, down below ground level, or at least below a deck level. And it was dangerous. The air quality was horrible. And so when I was working with the architects and engineers with that one, we came up with a solution to it using glass that totally lit that entire area during the daytime with natural light. It just filled it with natural light. So it was less
Mhm.
dangerous. People felt safer. They were more comfortable. They were happier to be at work. And those things are important for sure. And you can apply that to things like, as an example, working at let's say, a bank. I remember a project like that at a head office. And people were concerned about their security. So what can we do in relationship to that? So, we developed the system and well, we had the system, but I work with a company in Germany that does glass as an example for G7 meetings. They have glass that literally, the videos of dump trucks traveling at 50 kilometers an hour, bouncing off the glass. And so we showed them that what can be done with glass, in these areas where you absolutely will be safe and confident about making it through the day and getting home. So, yeah,
That's phenomenal. I think at one point that you really touched on, maybe not explicitly, but the idea that it is a psychological aspect that needs to be, put into client wishes that many people don't think about. You don't think about that an architectural solution could necessarily solve a productivity problem. Having that insight is actually very helpful. And like I was saying, or like you were saying, sorry, it's often not about selling your product, it's about solving the problem that the client didn't even, know how to had that they had a solution to. So I think the next thing I kind of want to talk about is, what's clicking right now. So I guess in your business specifically, what's working right now for Clearstream, whether it's, a particular service, a market segment, or, maybe even a way of delivering value, what might that be?
just in the last 2 weeks, it's kind of funny, two unique projects that required color was important as an example. Also, the control of light inside the building, what was happening, because they wanted to use a lot of light inside, or pardon me, glass inside the building. And so we had to
Mm,
create a glass finish, which is common, but on these glass colors that were laminated and show how, even though the interior was all glass, there would not be glass bouncing or light bouncing all over the place and blinding people inside the building. So just for the special finish, I had an email from someone Thursday of last week designing a church, and they want to bring lots of light in. They have a big skylight, and they're in out west in an area that's extremely sunny, and so they're concerned about solar heat gain and glare. You wouldn't be able to, in many days, even sit inside that area on a bright sunny day because the solar heat gain would be so intense and the glare you wouldn't be able to see the
mm.
pastor standing at the front. We and they had ideas what they wanted to do in terms of color, etc. So I showed them how they can solve all of those problems in one fell swoop, just by combining some materials and creating exactly what it is they want. But further today, energy, it's so much about energy and carbon measurements and this sort of thing, and the reuse of materials. And I would say those areas are of critical concern, and I'm finding them constantly rising to the surface more often than they did in the past.
Mhm.
So it's really interesting. It's in my world, it's a combination of many things. but all geared
Of
towards
course.
energy efficiency, people, etc. And so one thing is I used to do with architects and designers to get them to sometimes realize what it is that they're designing and what the impact would be. I would say, okay, let's take this room we're in. Let's say it's a 10 by 10 room. Okay, cover the window. Okay, now let's sit in here for the next 20 minutes. We can chat. How do you feel about this now? It's pretty gloomy in here, isn't it? How would you like to have to come into this office every day of your life and not have connection to the exterior? What do you think that would do?
Yeah.
And so now you take this off and now you see, oh my gosh, I can see trees, I can see the sky, etc. And it really makes you feel better. And it actually does make you better. And it does make you more productive. The other challenge with that is, well, if we have this big glass wall and now the sun's coming from that elevation here, I'm going to be cooking. I can't stand it. So what are you going to do? Well, historically, we put blinds up, but there are many, many other things we could do. We don't need blinds, to eliminate them, and we can control that environment. And that goes across a wide spectrum of things. So it becomes
Of course.
fun and interesting.
It's fun. It definitely opens up an angle for me, and I'm sure for some of the audience because it's not something you necessarily think about. It's always, okay, window or no window. That's pretty much as far
Window
as
and blind,
some
that
of the
was the answer,
questions.
right? Window and blind. So as an example, take
Exactly.
things like indoor pools. One of the big worries for indoor public pools is safety, of course, not just someone slipping around, but as an example, lifeguards being able to see to the bottom of the pool. Well, if you have a window at regular glass at the end of that building, and now the sun's streaming in through there, you're going to have so much glare on the top of the glass you can't see anything. You couldn't see if someone were drowning to the bottom of the pool. So what are the solutions? Historically, we're going to put, instead of one lifeguard, we're going to put two or four in there so that we can see
Yes.
all things at all angles, but that's expensive. But what can we do? Well, there are glass solutions that we have that totally eliminates that glare, brings in the natural light. You can see the exterior,
Hmm.
but you are disallowing dangerous glare on top of the surface of the water. And so that to me is real value add for the building, for the owners, the operators.
That's fantastic. I feel like you and I could sit here and you could explain these real life examples to me all day. I think I'm more interested than a lot of the people I've been recently talking to. But I honestly love that. I love to hear it, especially where, design meets performance with psychological aspects, but also things that you walk by every day or things that you're experiencing every day that you might not necessarily think that deep into. Why something is built the way it is, or what its purpose
So true.
of performance is.
So true.
Exactly. But also to switch gears, I imagine not every part of the process is seamless. And, I just want to maybe kind of explore, what's been frustrating or, difficult to navigate, whether it's, maybe a common trend or, client education, supply chain has been a big one recently, pushing some kind of innovation through the market. Is there anything that's maybe causing a bit of a roadblock or a speed bump that you'd care to share today?
I have to say no. I find that, generally speaking, no. I find architects to be very open-minded people.
Hmm.
They are looking for solutions. At the same time, they say, I have used this solution for so many years and it works, and I don't have any problems, and so I want to continue using that. So I would say if somebody asked me, what is your biggest competition? It's historical solutions, because it's kind of accepted. Well, that's what it is. No, no, we have to use blinds uh, because we want to have glass, or we want to have connectivity to the exterior. Going beyond that, it becomes a task, and it's a good task. You
Hmm.
know, it's um, it's an enjoyable thing as well. To say, I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in, lunch and learns, presentations, where people have said to me at the end of it, "I had no idea you could do that with glass," and it just made me so pleased. When I,
Well, that's me. I'm blown away right now.
yeah. So
No, but that's fantastic.
yeah, I can see it.
It sounds like,
Yeah, I think
of course, no, it sounds like it doesn't really come with, trying to stay, ahead of the curve. I feel like it's like the way you're explaining things, you kind of run with it and, find the solutions not only for the infrastructure, but, I feel like that applies into the business sense, into relationships, into, education. I think that's honestly fantastic. I guess what's been kind of the biggest takeaway from, that perspective of approaching things from a figure it out mindset.
Yes. I mean, dollars always come into it,
Can't complain.
Yeah. People want to do the ideas of what they would like to do, achieve, and then the costs they start adding up and say, oh my gosh, we're way over budget. Now, where are we going to cut? And
Hmm.
that's called value engineering. And where I sit often, I am the guy who they're looking at my glass sometimes and saying, wow, that's very expensive for that glass. Let's cut that. That takes a big chunk out of the cost of the building. And that has happened quite a bit. But I would say today, less so, because
Hmm.
designers and architects and owners are seeing the value of that and how it can contribute to the end user, the customer. Here's a great one I used to talk about. You're buying a condominium on the 60th floor of a building downtown in the city. You're facing the lake. It's a gorgeous view in there. And you're facing west. You get to see, the lake further, et cetera, the islands. Problem is, most people can't see that because their blinds are closed all the time because there's so much
Hmm.
glare and so much solar heat gain. It would turn their condominium into an oven. So we have a solution, totally eliminates that, allows you to see through the window, mitigates, controls the undesired solar heat gain and glare at the same time. And there are a number of ways to do that, actually. But so I would say, and some developers will say, look, we know we have to sell this thing for. Let's say it's $1,000 cost per square foot is what we have to build that for. There's no way someone's going to use your glass for another $10,000 or $20,000 a condominium to achieve that. And so, but then I would take them back to that. So one thing I did in a condo sales center, I put in a sample of my glass, this really excellent technological glass. And beside it, I put a glass with a blind. And behind that, I put powerful lights and then a view to the exterior night. And the sign over top was, which one would you like to have? And then the people they could control the blinds and they could control the glass. And and now $20,000 or 10,000, what the number was per condo became a non-figure. Of course they want it.
Hmm. It's the value that really
Yes,
like sold that
value to the
proposition.
person, right? It's the value to the
Yeah,
person. How is this going to make my life better, or is it going to make my life more enjoyable and and tolerable for the conditions inside the building?
exactly. Like you're buying these condominiums for for at least a fraction of the purpose is for those views, is
Yeah,
to,
sure.
really enjoy exactly what's going on in there. So I think bringing people back around to that is incredible. I think it is an easy thing to think that a cut is okay, but the way you're bringing it back and really, framing the whole idea of the glass, the experience of living in that condo, I think that is the biggest selling point anyways. So from another perspective, the glass could be one of the biggest selling points. So
Yes,
it's exactly. It's a very, very great way to pull that together. But I love the direction, especially, when you're collaborating with your designers and your builders. I just have one last quick question before we wrap up. But if you could wait, this is kind of a fun one. I like you could so have fun with it if you like. But if you could wave a wand and fix one part of your process or the broader street, like the broader industry overnight, what would it be?
my ability to communicate openly, easily, readily with decision makers or influencers on a commonly able to do it. And it's I understand why I can't because there, as you suggested at the beginning, there are millions of people out there sending fluff out all the time. And so,
Exactly.
we're all just sick of receiving those emails. But if I could do that and show people what can be done and how it would really improve the situation, energy use, all these other things, that would be my goal for sure. I'm working at it. I work at it every day doing that, but it's a challenge for sure.
Of course. I mean, I think that's the idea where the wand isn't necessarily something there, but it gives people an idea of something to work towards. But like you're talking about, right? Like there's a lot of content that's fluffy out there, and we kind of touched on it earlier. And we briefly touched on the marketing side of things. So you're looking at your Facebook and your Google and everything like that. you might not be hitting your target market. But I'm just wondering, has that ever been something that you've tried? Because there's a lot of companies that, we've worked with that are trying and are getting, sufficient results through it. But I'm just wondering how that would apply to your industry.
So I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on Facebook ads and Google ads, that sort of thing, and the results were absolutely abysmal every time. Sure, I would get some leads. It would be somebody wanting a new window for their kitchen, or the patio door, something like that. So it's found that that is not the way to do it. For me, the way to do it is through, as an example, LinkedIn with the selective people that I've asked to follow and join my network, through emails where I try to, say, hey, look, I've been smoking for a while. Here's something new you might have interest in, and uh, but that's the way it works. And the other, it just doesn't work. It's more of a consumer product area versus a highly technical product area. So to give you an example, so as an example, to get I've done a number of hospitals and any type, you can name any type of building. But to get my glass in it doesn't have to be a hospital because that sounds more technical. Let's say a library or university building. I have to get the
Mhm.
designer to like it. I have to get the architect to like it. Then I have to get the spec writer to agree that to spec it in there. Then I have to get the engineers to see what the energy operating efficiencies are of that and make it work. And then I have the budget people as well. And then I have the operators of the building, and so you have, I'll pick a number, 8 or 10 levels in that process who any one of them can say no and
Exactly.
you're out.
And I feel like you're always jumping up and down between the levels anyways before you,
It's needs
get all the
you
way
have
to the
like a
top.
calm approach of and a steadfast approach of this is what we can do. So, as example, one today, I had all these really technical questions regarding that church, and because it's almost all glass, and it was great to see, and I'm able to demonstrate to them technically exactly what it's going to do. And I know that
Mhm.
I know it exceeded their expectations. And so that was their consultant, their energy consultant, engineering consultant. And they have an energy consultant and they have a lighting consultant. And so you have to make it all work
Mhm.
together. And so yeah. So it's don't overstate anything, say it exactly like it is, not more. And yeah, try to keep it.
That's incredible. No, that's a great perspective, John. And honestly, I want to wrap it up quickly, but this has been awesome. I really appreciate you walking us through the business, but also the thinking behind your innovation. And I'll send you over a summary later, but I think this is a fantastic way to kind of break into the not only like for us as a podcast and as an agency to break into the architectural side of things, but also really get a foot forward and thinking about the minuscule details that are often overlooked that you've built a fantastic career out of and have so much knowledge to share. So, I mean, I would love to have you back on eventually. I think the audience will definitely have their piece to say. But until then, John, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and we can't wait to have you back on again sometime
Yeah,
soon.
it's my pleasure. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Of course. All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you next week.